Today is part one. What should I do with my life? And it's really going to be more on some perspectives and science behind meaning and purpose. But the reason I call it that, the title for the class, What Should I Do with My Life, is because I found that that is one of the main struggles for people. Particularly younger people, college, early career, but people throughout their lives, really this anything related to future uncertainty. So back when I was creating this course, I'd ask people, what keeps you up at night? Actually a great conversation starter. So I was trying to figure out, what do I need to focus on relating to happiness? And about 70% of people in some way referenced what I'd call future uncertainty. So that could be, a lot of that was related to career, what should I do with my life, right? But in general, this, I think, question of purpose, and what does the future have in store? What direction should I take? What's my purpose? Was a big challenge to people. And it's been a challenge to me in my life. So that's why I call it that. And I want you to know that most people struggle with this. So the first thing I want to say is, we'll get into some strategies for how to work with this and the science of meaning. But first and foremost is I encourage you to embrace uncertainty. One of the best, strategies or ways of thinking about this I know came from Victor Chang. And he talks about horizons. So if you're in a field, flat ground, looking out, you can only see actually 7 miles before the earth curves. He says you can only see so far, right? And then the earth curves, it drops off. There's nothing you can do. You can't see what's over that horizon until you start in a certain direction. And so I think that when you think about time, this is very much the same way. So many opportunities, so many changes that are coming in our lives are just over the horizon. So, there's no real use trying to worry too much about them, right? So we should be focused on our direction and starting our course in a direction that we want to go, and then things will come over the horizon. Okay, and then we'll see, there's an opportunity there. So I think that's very important to, again, embrace the uncertainty. Know that just like what's over the horizon, we can only see so far into our future, and we should be focused more on our trajectory than our big goals or our dream job, whatever. Day to day, individual steps, if they're in the right direction, we're going to get to where we want to go. Instead of trying to project out 10, 20 years or whatever, again, embrace right now uncertainty. You can only see so far. So that's number one, right? Because we also know too that, stressing out, frantically being neurotic about what am I going to do? It doesn't help. I've been there. It does not help you think effectively about the future. So that's number one. But now let's get into a little bit of the science behind meaning and purpose. There's two thinkers that we're going to focus on today, two psychologists, Viktor Frankl and Martin Seligman. Viktor Frankl, he really pioneered logotherapy, or sort of meaning-based psychology. He posited that the will to meaning was humankind's fundamental drive of human nature. And the way he formulated this theory is pretty crazy. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and he was a psychologist, and he was taken to a concentration camp in Nazi Germany. And during that time, he kind of turned it into a field study of sorts, of understanding human nature and who survived and how people operated within these unimaginable circumstances. And what he found was that meaning was really the key. And so he went on to found this sort of school of psychology, which really focused on addressing people's needs through meaning. And so he says that there are really 3 ways to cultivate meaning in our own lives. And the first is by doing a work or deed. Okay. The second is by fully experiencing someone or something. And the third is in the attitude we take towards unavoidable suffering. So let's think about each of those for a moment. Building a work or doing a deed, right? So that's something we're being active. We find meaning in that process of creating something. The second one of experience, I think of as maybe a mother and her child, or maybe a father and the child, or maybe partners in a relationship, or maybe someone experiencing nature, right? Whatever it is, being fully there for the experience of something or someone can add a lot of meaning to our lives. And then third, this idea of the attitude we take towards unavoidable suffering. This was really one of the big ones that came out of his time in the concentration camp, is finding a purpose in our suffering, right? And understanding also that suffering is universal, and it's a part of life. So some of Frankl's work, right, that might help inform us on how we can find meaning in our lives. Is there a work or a project, something you feel really passionate about? Okay, maybe is there something that you really love to experience, right? Maybe it should be like a naturalist, studying nature, or you want to be building something, right, for engineering, whatever. And again, that's finally that attitude we take towards unavoidable suffering. Not all of life's great, but maybe we say, I'm going to sacrifice to provide for my family, or I'm going to sacrifice to serve a greater good. Okay, so these can inform some of our thinking. Let's talk about Seligman as well. So he's the founder of positive psychology, and he views meaning and purpose really as identifying your signature strengths and using them to serve something greater than you are. So let's think of that in two parts. The signature strengths, right? I always ask people, how much do you enjoy doing things that you're really just terrible at, you suck at, you have no natural ability for, right? Probably not a whole lot. And so your signature strengths is, it's not that we're limited in terms of our genetics or our nature, but our genetics and our nature give us sort of an area of focus. We say, hey, I'm really strong in these areas, so my effort should be directed towards those, because those are the highest form of leverage, right? If you're 5'5", you probably don't want to dedicate yourself to basketball, right? But if you're more introverted and you're very analytical and very logical, maybe you should invest in some more sort of technical career, right? So our signature strengths are kind of our natural inclinations and abilities, right, that can inform our sense of direction. And the second part is using them to serve something greater than we are, right? Whether it's a team, a community, a religion, right? That's part of human nature, is to feel we're part of something greater than us. So if we can find alignment there between what we're really good at and a cause greater than we are, Seligman says we'll find meaning. And I think that's a useful framework. So I always think of an example, maybe naturally you're very analytical, very organized, and you were raised religiously. So you may say, I'm going to be an accountant for a Christian organization like a large church or something. Okay, so you're using your strengths to serve a cause greater than you. Maybe you say, I'm really, I'm naturally. Maybe we'll think about an athlete here, right? So I'm naturally really big, really strong. I'm going to be a football player, right? And I'm going to serve my team or represent my community, whatever. Most of us aren't going to be pro athletes, but you get that idea, right? So can you find an alignment there between what you're naturally wired towards and then a cause that's greater than you are? So those are kind of the high-level perspectives on meaning and purpose. Now, what I want to do next is give you a few diagnostic tools that you can use to help you identify potentially your areas of purpose, right? So I better understand your strengths, maybe your weaknesses, and what might be a fulfilling path for you. So there's 4 diagnostics I'm going to talk about. Number 1 is and I'll share these in a resource, is the VIA character assessment. So this actually they worked with Martin Seligman, and this is going to be a questionnaire that helps you identify your signature strengths, right? So you can go through that questionnaire, find those, and say, hey, well, it looks like these are my strengths, right? Maybe I can, I see that I'm very analytical, or I see that I'm a good learner, I see that I'm extroverted, right? Maybe I can apply those to my career, Okay. Another one is SEMA, for the System for Identifying Motivated Abilities. This one's a little more expensive, but if you can access it maybe through your employer or your university, that would be great. It basically will ask you to write a series of essays, and it analyzes those using computer algorithms and experts to help you pull out your motivated abilities, which are kind of like your signature strengths. Those are things that you're naturally good at, but you're also intrinsically motivated to do. Then we have the SDS, self-directed search. You can find that. That one is not as in-depth with the strengths, but I really like it because it actually has a database of relevant careers that you might choose from, right? So it gives you like a 3-letter code that represents your sort of personality type, and then it has a whole database of potential careers that have that same code. So it's very practical. Then a final one that I really enjoyed is actually the Spark type, which comes from Jonathan Fields. But it's a short quiz, and it just gives you kind of an archetype name. So I think mine was, it gives you your archetype and then your shadow type. I think mine was Maven, which is someone who really likes to learn. And then Sage was my second one, which is someone that teaches. So based on the fact that I created my own major, studying happiness, now I'm teaching it, seemed pretty accurate. So those are a few diagnostics that I'll share with you. Again, it can help you identify kind of your, that alignment that we talked about with your strengths, something larger, right? Building a sense of purpose. Finally, again, trying to go from, right now it's been a little more theoretical to very practical. What I'm going to share next is a sort of playlist of some of the best strategies I've found for approaching this question of what should I do with my life. So each one of these is basically a different, one of them's mine, but then there's different thinkers who kind of lay out, what's like a guiding framework or set of principles that you can use to figure out, what should I do? All right, so I'm going to give you a little playlist of those. And then finally, I will leave you with a little activity from Berkeley, the Greater Good Center, that again, just helps you think about your future and vision in the context of happiness.